My daughter-in-law slapped me in the face and demanded my house keys. My name is Rose Thompson, and at 72 years old, I never thought I'd be telling this story. For 43 years I worked as a high school principal in Clayton County, Georgia, watching thousands of young minds blossom, but nothing in my career prepared me for what happened in my own family. I'm sitting here in my favorite armchair, the one my late husband James bought me 20 years ago, running my fingers over the smooth wooden house key that started it all. Funny how something so small can hold so much weight. If you're watching this and have ever trusted someone who betrayed you, drop a heart in the comments. Sometimes sharing our stories helps heal the wounds we keep hidden. It was a warm Sunday afternoon in May when everything changed. My son Marcus had moved back home with his new wife, Destiny, claiming they needed to save money for their own place. I'd been hesitant. Something about Destiny's sweet smile never quite reached her eyes. But Marcus was my only child. What mother could say no? That Sunday I was in my garden, tending to my prized roses, when I overheard them arguing through the kitchen window. Destiny's voice carried that sharp edge I'd grown to recognize. "Your mama's gotta learn she can't control everything in this house." I froze, my pruning shears hovering over a stem. Marcus's response was too low to hear, but Destiny's laugh made my skin crawl. I'd seen changes in my boy over the 6 months they'd lived with me. How he'd stopped meeting my eyes, how his shoulders tensed whenever she entered a room. The screen door slammed, and I straightened up, brushing dirt from my gardening apron. Destiny stormed across the lawn, her designer handbag swinging wildly. When she saw me, she stopped dead in her tracks. "Rose." Her voice dripped honey, but her eyes were cold as winter. "We need to talk about these living arrangements." I gripped my pruning shears tighter. "What about them, Destiny? Marcus and I have been discussing things." She stepped closer, designer heels sinking into my freshly mulched flower bed. "This is a big house for just one person, don't you think?" The pruning shears trembled in my hand. "This home has been in my family for 3 generations. And isn't it time for the next generation to take over?" Her smile widened. "Marcus agrees. We think it's time you considered moving into that nice retirement community across town." My throat tightened. "Where's Marcus? I'd like to hear this from him." "Oh, he's inside, packing some of your things." She held out her manicured hand. "We'll need your keys." I felt the blood drain from my face. "My keys? Don't make this difficult, Rose." Her voice hardened. "The house will be in better hands with us. You're getting older, and accidents happen. What if you fell? What if you left the stove on? Have you ever felt your world shift beneath your feet? Tell me in the comments if you've experienced that moment when someone shows their true colors." What happened next still plays in my mind like a slow-motion scene from a nightmare. I turned toward the house, calling for Marcus. Destiny grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. When I pulled away, her hand cracked across my face, the sound sharp as a thunderclap in the quiet garden. "The keys, Rose. Now." But what Destiny didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that I'd seen this coming. In my 4 decades as a principal, I'd learned to read people like books, and I'd been making my own plans, quiet as a prayer. The slap wasn't what shocked me most that day. It was the shadow I caught in the kitchen window. Marcus, watching it all happen, doing nothing. Before I tell you what I did next, I want to know, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you have handed over those keys? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for the next part of my story. Little did they know, those house keys were the least of what I had locked away. Sometimes the quietest people keep the biggest secrets. And I was about to show them exactly why you don't underestimate a woman who spent her life teaching lessons. That night, after the sting of Destiny's slap had faded to a dull throb, I sat in my darkened kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd raised Marcus, where I'd taught him to bake his father's favorite sweet potato pie recipe, where I'd held him when his daddy passed. Now it felt like a battlefield. For those just joining my story, take a moment to like and subscribe. Every one of you gives me strength to continue sharing this painful journey. What nobody knew was that I hadn't spent 43 years in education without learning how to handle a crisis. 3 months earlier, when I first noticed my jewelry disappearing piece by piece, including my grandmother's pearl necklace, I'd started documenting everything. Every cold comment from Destiny, every missing item, every strange phone call she made when she thought no one was listening. I pulled out my iPad, a retirement gift I'd learned to use well, and opened my secret email folder. Inside were dozens of recordings, photographs, and detailed notes. You see, Georgia is a one-party consent state for recordings, something I'd learned dealing with difficult parents over the years. Planning to put me in a home. Are you? I whispered to the darkness, my fingers trembling as I pressed play on one of the recordings. Destiny's voice filled the quiet kitchen. Once we get the old lady out, we can sell this place. Do you know what houses in this neighborhood are going for? Marcus's voice, weak and uncertain. I don't know, babe. Maybe we should wait. Wait for what? For her to change her will? Get your priorities straight. I stopped the recording, my heart heavy. The son I raised would never have considered this. Something wasn't right, and it went deeper than Destiny's influence. Have you ever noticed someone you love changing before your eyes? Drop a in the comments if you know that pain. The next morning, I made my move. I called my longtime friend Patricia, who'd retired as a social worker. She arrived with her daughter Kenya, who happened to be a real estate lawyer. We sat in Patricia's car around the corner from my house, watching Destiny leave for her job, a position she claimed to have but I'd never been able to verify. Rose, Kenya said, reviewing my documentation, this is more than just elder abuse. These bank statements you showed me, something's not adding up. Patricia squeezed my hand. Tell her about Marcus's behavior changes. I described how my once confident son had become withdrawn, how he'd lost weight, how his hands shook when Destiny was around. It's like he's afraid of her but also desperate to please her. Kenya's eyes narrowed. Have you heard of financial coercion? It's a form of domestic abuse. These patterns you're describing. A text lit up my phone. Marcus asking where I was. Destiny had apparently come home early and found the house empty. Let them sweat, Patricia said, but I could see the worry in her eyes. What we discovered over the next 2 hours shook me to my core. Kenya's preliminary investigation revealed that Destiny had a history, 3 previous marriages, each ending with allegations of fraud. But it was what we found about Marcus's bank accounts that made my blood run cold. I need to pause here and ask, have you ever discovered something about someone that made you question everything you thought you knew? Sometimes the truth hits harder than any slap. I thought the keys to my house were what Destiny wanted. I was wrong. They were just the beginning. What she'd done to my son, how she'd trapped him, it was all part of a bigger plan. As I sat there in Patricia's car watching my own home like a stranger, I realized that saving my house meant first saving my son. But time was running out. Through the car window, I saw Destiny's red Mercedes pull into my driveway. She stepped out, designer heels clicking on the pavement, phone pressed to her ear. Even from this distance, her face looked thunderous. What she didn't know was that while she'd been planning to take my house, I'd been planning to. Sometimes the best lessons are taught quietly, and I was about to give the performance of my lifetime. Stay tuned for what happens next. Subscribe and hit that notification bell, because tomorrow, I'm going to show you exactly how a retired principal handles someone who underestimates her. The next move I made would either save my son or lose him forever. But when you've spent your life shaping young minds, you learn that sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones that hurt most to teach. What happened next still gives me chills when I think about it. As I watched Destiny pace my driveway from Patricia's car, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Marcus. It was an email from Kenya's investigator friend. If you're following my story, you know things are about to get intense. Hit that like button if you've ever had to face someone who tried to destroy your family. The email contained information that made my hands shake. Destiny wasn't just a con artist. She was wanted in 3 states. Her real name wasn't even Destiny. It was Denise Watson, and she had a pattern: marry men from well-off families, isolate them, then drain them dry. But what caught my eye was the mention of prescription drugs found in her previous victim's system. Drugs that could make someone compliant, confused, dependent. Suddenly Marcus's symptoms made terrible sense. Rose, Patricia whispered.
If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me keep bringing you more amazing love stories. All right, back to the story.
Through the car window, we watched as Destiny made another call, her voice carrying across the quiet street. No, I need it done today. The old lady's gone missing. Yes, I've got his signature on everything. Just make sure the transfer goes through. My heart stopped. What transfer? Kenya was already typing furiously on her laptop. Mrs. Thompson, when was the last time you checked your home equity line of credit? The next 30 minutes were a blur of discoveries. Not only had Destiny been drugging my son, but she'd also managed to get his signature on documents authorizing a massive loan against my house. The paperwork had been submitted that morning. Have you ever had that moment when all the puzzle pieces suddenly fit together? Drop a 10 in the comments if you know that feeling. I thought about my son inside that house, probably confused, probably worried. The boy who used to bring me wildflowers from the garden, who'd worked his way through college, who'd made me proud every single day until Destiny came into our lives. My Marcus was still in there, and I was going to get him back. It's time, I said, reaching for my purse. Inside was a small recorder, and a USB drive containing everything we'd discovered. Patricia grabbed my arm. Rose, wait for the police. No, I said firmly. I'm not waiting while she destroys what's left of my son. I stepped out of the car, my legs steady despite my racing heart. As I walked toward my house, Destiny spotted me. Her face went through a series of expressions. Surprise, anger, then that fake sweet smile I'd grown to hate. Rose, we've been so worried. She hurried toward me, arms outstretched as if to hug me. I held up my hand, stopping her cold. Where's my son, Denise? The color drained from her face. For a moment, just a moment, her mask slipped. What did you call me? I said. Where is my son, Denise Watson? Or should I use one of your other names? Marcus appeared in the doorway, looking dazed. Mom, what's going on? Ask your wife about the pills, Marcus. Ask her why you can't seem to think straight anymore. Ask her about the equity loan she had you sign this morning. Destiny's face contorted. She's confused, Marcus. Remember what we talked about? She's getting senile. The only confused person here, I said, my voice carrying across the yard, is my son. But that's going to change today. I pulled out my phone and played one of the recordings. Destiny talking to someone about drug doses and timing. Marcus's face went from confusion to shock. He stumbled slightly, grabbing the doorframe. Don't listen to her. Destiny shrieked, but her designer mask was cracking. She's trying to come between us. For those watching, remember, sometimes the most dangerous predators wear the prettiest smiles. What happened next happened fast. Destiny lunged for my phone, but I was ready. I stepped back as Patricia and Kenya emerged from the car, followed by 2 police officers who'd been waiting around the corner. Destiny's eyes darted around like a trapped animal. She made a break for her car, but she didn't get 3 steps before the officers caught her. As they read her rights, I rushed to Marcus, who had slid down the doorframe to sit on the porch steps, his head in his hands. Son, I whispered, kneeling beside him despite my old knees protesting. We're going to get you help. Real help. He looked up at me, and for the first time in months, I saw clarity fighting through the fog in his eyes. Mom, he choked out, I'm so sorry about the slap. I wanted to stop her, but I couldn't move. I know, baby. I know. I held him like I used to when he was small, watching over his shoulder as the officers put Destiny in the back of their car. She caught my eye through the window, and the look she gave me would have frozen hell itself, but I just smiled and waved, the same way I used to wave goodbye to troublemakers in my school office. Because some people need to learn, never underestimate a mother's love, or a principal's capacity for strategic thinking. Before I tell you what we found in Destiny's private storage unit, let me know, have you ever had to fight for someone you love, someone who couldn't fight for themselves? Share your story in the comments below. The day wasn't over yet, and neither was our battle. Marcus needed medical attention, and the house's equity loan situation needed to be resolved. But as I held my son, watching Destiny's car disappear around the corner, I knew the worst was over. Sometimes the hardest keys to hold on to aren't the ones that open doors, they're the ones that unlock the truth. Chapter 4. Unlocking the Truth. The next 24 hours moved like a hurricane in slow motion. At the hospital, the toxicology report confirmed our worst fear. Marcus had enough benzodiazepines in his system to explain his fog-like state. The doctor said it was a miracle he'd been able to function at all. If you're just joining us on this journey, make sure to subscribe. What I'm about to share might save someone else's life. Mrs. Thompson, a detective, stood in the hospital room doorway while Marcus slept. We need to talk about what we found in Denise Watson's storage unit. I followed him to a quiet consultation room, my heart already knowing this wasn't going to be good news. On the table, he spread out photographs, dozens of them. Each one showed a different family, a different home, a different victim, but the pattern was always the same. 7 families across 4 states, the detective explained. She'd target men with strong family ties, particularly those with property or inheritance potential. The drugs would start small, just enough to make them suggestible. Then she'd isolate them, turn them against family and take everything. I finished, my voice barely a whisper. Have you ever looked at evil right in the face and seen it wearing designer clothes? Drop us in the comments if you've encountered someone who seemed too perfect to be true. But what hit me hardest wasn't the other victims' stories. It was what we found in her personal file. She'd been researching my family for months before meeting Marcus. My house, my pension, my late husband's life insurance payout. She knew everything. There were even photos of me taken through my kitchen window while I was cooking, unaware I was being stalked. What happens to her other victims? I asked. The detective's face darkened. 2 died from accidental overdoses after their accounts were drained. 3 more are in long-term care facilities. Their minds never fully recovered. 1 managed to escape but lost everything in the process. I thought about Marcus sleeping in the other room, about how close we'd come to becoming another statistic in her file. And the money? Offshore accounts, mostly. We're working on recovery, but he didn't need to finish. I knew what offshore meant. It meant gone. Back in Marcus's room, I watched my son's chest rise and fall. The doctors said it would take weeks for the drugs to leave his system completely, months for his mind to fully clear, but at least he was safe. At least we'd caught it in time. For anyone watching who has a loved one acting strange or suddenly changing personality, please pay attention. Sometimes the signs we ignore are the ones that matter most. That evening, while Marcus rested, I returned home with a police escort to collect some clothes and necessities. Walking through my front door felt different now. Every shadow held a memory of Destiny's presence. Every corner echoed with her lies. In the master bedroom, where she and Marcus had stayed, I found her real work. Hidden in a false bottom of her jewelry box was a small notebook. Inside were calculations, how much my house was worth, potential sale prices, estimated timelines for what she called the final stage. Next to my name was a date, just 3 weeks away, and the word accident followed by a question mark. My hands trembled as I handed the notebook to the evidence technician. She was planning to... Yes, ma'am, he said quietly. You didn't just save your son, you saved yourself too. Sometimes guardian angels don't have wings. They have decades of experience dealing with troublemakers in a high school principal's office. Like this video, if you believe in trusting your instincts. But the real shock came when we checked Marcus's personal laptop. Hidden in encrypted files were videos Destiny had taken, blackmail material of Marcus in his drugged state, doing and saying things he'd never remember. She'd been building a case to have him declared incompetent, planning to take control of everything. Marcus's voice came weakly through my phone. He was calling from the hospital. The doctor showed me some of the blood test results. I don't remember so much of the past year. Did I stand there while she... Shh, I soothed, even as tears ran down my face. None of that was you, baby. None of it. As I packed a bag to return to the hospital, I found one last surprise in Marcus's old childhood bedroom. A series of letters he'd tried to write me, never sent, each one more confused and desperate than the last. The final one broke my heart. Mom, something's wrong with me. I can't think straight. Please help me. But don't tell Destiny I wrote this. That letter was dated just 2 weeks ago. Even through the fog of drugs and manipulation, my boy had been fighting, trying to reach out. Before I share what happened at Destiny's bail hearing, tell me, Have you ever found evidence of someone you love trying to cry for help? How did you respond? Standing in his old room, holding those letters, I made a promise. This story wouldn't end with just stopping destiny. No, this story would become a warning, a lesson, a beacon for other families. Because sometimes the most dangerous predators aren't the ones who break into your home, they're the ones you invite in with open arms and hopeful hearts. The real test of our strength was just beginning, but at least now we were facing it together, clear-eyed and free from destiny's web of lies. 3 months after that fateful day in my garden, I sat in the county courthouse, my back straight despite my exhaustion. Marcus sat beside me, finally clear-eyed and looking more like himself, though the shadows under his eyes told of sleepless nights still haunted by memories slowly returning. For those who followed our story from the beginning, thank you. Your support has meant everything. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe because what happened next changed everything. Destiny, or Denise Watson, as she was now officially known, sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, a far cry from her designer outfit. She'd lost weight in jail, but her eyes were still calculating, still searching for angles even now. All rise, the bailiff called. What followed was like something from a TV drama, except this was our real life. The prosecutor laid out the evidence. 7 families destroyed across 4 states, 2 deaths, millions in stolen assets. And then there was us, the family that broke her pattern. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand with my head high. Destiny smirked, probably expecting a frail emotional grandmother. She didn't know I'd spent decades handling school board meetings and angry parents. Drop a hint in the comments if you've ever had to stand up to someone who thought they could intimidate you. Mrs. Thompson, the prosecutor began, please tell the court how you first became suspicious of the defendant. I looked directly at Destiny as I spoke. It was the little things at first, the way she'd move through my house like she owned it, how my son's personality changed. But what really opened my eyes was when my late husband's watch disappeared. Objection, Destiny's lawyer called out. Speculation, overruled, the judge replied. Continue, Mrs. Thompson. I pulled out my iPad, the same one I'd used to document everything. I have photos of every item that went missing with dates. I have recordings of conversations, but most importantly, I have the prosecutor displayed my evidence on the courtroom screen, a series of bank statements showing how Destiny had systematically drugged and robbed not just my son but all her victims using the same methodology each time. Sometimes the best weapon against evil isn't a gun or a knife, it's careful documentation and patience. Like this video if you believe in the power of keeping receipts. But the real bombshell came when Marcus took the stand. Now fully detoxed and with months of therapy behind him, he could finally piece together what had happened. His testimony was devastating. She started with small pills, he said, his voice steady but pained. Said they were vitamins. Then when I'd question things, she'd show me videos of myself doing things I couldn't remember. She convinced me I was having mental breaks, that only she could help me. Destiny's smirk finally cracked. She hadn't expected Marcus to recover enough to testify. She certainly hadn't expected him to remember the locations of her other storage units, the ones the police hadn't found in their first search. During the cross-examination, Destiny's lawyer tried to paint me as a controlling mother who couldn't let go, but I just smiled and pulled out my final piece of evidence, the notebook we'd found in her room, with its chilling timeline for my accident. Mrs. Thompson, her lawyer asked, "Isn't it true you never gave my client a chance?" On the contrary, I replied, my voice clear and strong. I gave her too many chances. I watched her poison my son, steal our memories, and plan my death. The real question is, how many chances should a snake get before you call it what it is? Have you ever had to face someone who tried to destroy your life? Share your story of triumph in the comments below. The jury took less than 2 hours to reach their verdict. Guilty on all counts: fraud, theft, attempted murder, drug charges. The list went on. When the judge announced her sentence, 30 years without possibility of parole, Destiny finally lost her composure. "You don't understand," she screamed as they led her away. "That house was supposed to be mine. Everything was supposed to be mine." I stood up slowly, letting her see me one last time. "The only thing that's yours," I said clearly, "is the time you've earned behind bars. And baby, I hope you enjoy every minute of it." Outside the courthouse, Marcus hugged me tight. Mom, I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself for what happened. You weren't yourself, I reminded him. But you're back now, and that's what matters. We're still healing. Marcus is back in therapy, working through his trauma. The house is ours again. The bank reversed the fraudulent loan once they saw the evidence. But more importantly, we're rebuilding our trust, our relationship, our life. Before I end this story, I want you all to know something. If you see someone you love changing dramatically, don't wait. Don't doubt yourself. Don't let anyone tell you you're imagining things. Trust your instincts. Sometimes the biggest battles aren't fought with fists or weapons, but with wisdom, patience, and a mother's love. And sometimes the sweetest victory isn't in winning, it's in healing afterward. If this story helped you or someone you know, please share it. Subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories of survival and justice, because together we can protect each other from the destinies of this world. Remember, the keys to your house aren't just metal, they're trust, love, and family. Guard them well, and never let anyone make you doubt what you know in your heart to be true. A year has passed since Destiny's sentencing, and I'm sitting in my garden again, but everything feels different now. The roses I tend are new ones. I dug up all the old bushes that reminded me of that day. Sometimes healing means starting fresh. For those who followed our journey, you know the court case wasn't the end. If you're new here, subscribe, because healing is often where the real story begins. Marcus moved back home, but this time it's different. He's in the garage apartment we renovated together, his space, his sanctuary. Every morning I hear him up early, practicing the meditation techniques his therapist taught him. The fog of Destiny's drugs is long gone, but the work of rebuilding himself continues. Mom, he said one morning over coffee, I found something yesterday while cleaning out my old file. He handed me a wrinkled envelope. Inside was a birthday card he'd tried to send me during Destiny's reign. Never mailed, half finished, the handwriting shaky. I think I was fighting through the haze that day, he explained. I knew something was wrong, but it was like trying to scream underwater. Have you ever found evidence of your past self trying to break free? Drop a saying in the comments if you understand that feeling of emergence. But the real changes came from unexpected places. After our story made the local news, other families started reaching out, women whose sons had disappeared into similar relationships, men whose mothers were being isolated by suspicious new friends, people who recognized the pattern but didn't know how to fight it. So I did what any retired principal would do. I started teaching again. Every Wednesday evening, my living room fills with people sharing their stories, learning the warning signs, building support networks. We call it Rose's Thorns, because sometimes the best protection comes with a little bit of sting. Tell them about the letter, Rose, Patricia urged during one meeting. I hadn't planned to share it, but maybe it was time. 3 months after Destiny's sentencing, I received a letter from one of her previous victims' mothers. Her son hadn't survived Destiny's care. He'd been found dead from an apparent overdose after she drained his accounts. Your story saved others, the letter read. My Tommy didn't make it, but because of you, other mothers will keep their sons. Thank you for being stronger than I was. Sometimes our greatest pain becomes someone else's salvation. If you know someone who needs to hear this story, share it now. The support group grew, and with it came unexpected allies. Local police departments asked me to speak at community meetings. Social workers started referring families to our Wednesday sessions. Even the FBI reached out, wanting to understand how we'd caught what so many others had missed. Marcus found his purpose in this new chapter too. Once he'd progressed enough in his own recovery, he started working with a nonprofit that helps victims of financial and psychological abuse. His experience, painful as it was, became a lighthouse for others lost in similar storms. You know what's weird, Mom? He said recently. I actually feel grateful now. Grateful? I asked, surprised. If this hadn't happened to us, how many other families would Destiny have destroyed? Sometimes you have to go through the fire to become the person who can help others escape it. For anyone watching who's still in their own fire, remember, every survivor started as a victim. It's not where you are, it's where you're going. Drop a light if you're on your own journey to healing. But life has a way of bringing things full circle. Last month I received another letter, this time from prison. Destiny's handwriting, still elegant despite everything, asking for forgiveness. I sat in my garden for hours with that letter, watching the new roses sway in the breeze. Finally, I took out my phone and recorded my response. Destiny, or Denise, or whatever your real name might be, you asked for my forgiveness. Here's the truth. I forgave you the moment they led you away in handcuffs. Not for you, but for me. Because holding on to hatred is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. But forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting, and it certainly isn't an invitation back into our lives. May you find peace in your 30 years of contemplation. I never sent. Some responses are better kept as personal victories. Before I end this chapter, I want to ask, what would you have done with that letter? Would you have responded? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The house keys that started this whole story hang by my door now, alongside new ones. But the most important keys I've learned are the ones we carry inside us. The key of wisdom that comes from suffering, the key of strength that comes from survival, and the key of hope that comes from helping others. Marcus and I are planning to write a book together about our experience. He says it's time to turn our pain into purpose, on a bigger scale. And isn't that what life is about? Taking our darkest chapters and using them to light the way for others. If our story has helped you, please subscribe and share. Together, we're building a network of awareness and support that no destiny can penetrate. Because sometimes the happy ending isn't about everything returning to normal. It's about building something better from the pieces of what was broken. Today marks 18 months since Destiny's sentencing, and something unexpected happened that made me realize our story was far from over. I was at the grocery store, picking out peaches, when a young woman approached me, trembling. And if you've been following our journey, you know healing comes in waves. Hit subscribe to see how this chapter unfolds. Are you Rose? Rose Thompson? She asked, clutching her phone. I saw your videos. I think my brother is being targeted by someone like Destiny. Her name was Janae, and right there between the fruit stands and shopping carts, she showed me photos of her brother's transformation over 6 months. The vacant stare, the weight loss, the isolation. It was like looking at Marcus's pictures all over again. The woman he's with, Janae whispered. She's already got him to refinance his house. For those who recognize these warning signs in someone you love, drop it in the comments. Your instincts might save a life. I called Marcus immediately. Within hours, we had Janae in our living room, along with Patricia and 2 detectives who'd worked our case. By midnight, we had a plan. By the end of the week, her brother James was safe, detoxing in the same hospital that had helped Marcus. His fiancée was in custody, linked to 3 other cases across state lines. But what happened next showed us just how deep these waters ran. During one of our Wednesday Roses Thorns meetings, a retired detective shared something chilling. These predators weren't just working independently. Many were connected through online forums, sharing techniques, target profiles, and even pharmaceutical contacts. Your case broke open something bigger, he explained. When we caught Destiny, her phone led us to other. It's like a dark pyramid scheme of destruction. Marcus, who was co-leading the support group now, leaned forward. Mom, remember those storage unit records? The ones with all the dates and locations? I nodded, feeling a chill despite the warm room. What if we mapped them against other known cases? Created a timeline, showed the pattern. Sometimes the biggest battles aren't won in courtrooms, but in Excel spreadsheets and databases. Like this video if you believe in the power of documentation. That's how Operation Rose Garden was born. Working with law enforcement, our support group members began collecting data, tracking patterns and identifying potential predators before they could strike. The retired detective called it preventative justice, but the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Destiny herself. Mrs. Thompson, a prison counselor, called one afternoon. Inmate Watson has been cooperating with investigations. She's named names, provided evidence. She says your story made her realize the magnitude of what she'd done. I sat down hard in my favorite chair. Why now? She watched your videos, all of them. She saw how many lives she'd affected, how many families she'd broken. Sometimes, ma'am, impact has to ripple back before it can ripple forward. Have you ever seen your pain become the catalyst for positive change? Share your transformation story in the comments. The information Destiny provided led to 12 arrests across 7 states. Each arrest brought more families to our Wednesday meetings. more stories of survival, more opportunities for healing. Marcus threw himself into the work, using his experience in the worst months of his fog to help other victims find their way back. He started a men's support group, breaking the silence around male victims of manipulation and abuse. "You know what's funny, Mom?" he said one evening, as we worked on our database. "When I was under her control, I couldn't even write my own name clearly. Now I'm helping write the manual on how to spot people like her." The manual he mentioned became a collaboration between our support group and law enforcement. The Predator's Pattern, a survivor's guide to identifying and escaping financial and emotional abuse, is now used in police training across the country. If you're working with law enforcement or social services, this information could save lives. Share this video with your colleagues. But perhaps the most powerful moment came last week, during a national conference on domestic abuse. I was invited to speak, but instead of going alone, I brought 5 other survivors from our group. We stood together, sharing different pieces of the same dark puzzle, showing how these predators work and how communities can fight back. "Mrs. Thompson," a young officer asked during the Q&A, "what's the one thing you want people to remember?" I thought about Janae's brother, about all the others we'd helped, about Marcus's journey from victim to advocate. "Remember that predators count on silence," I said. "They count on shame keeping their victims quiet. But shame can't survive in the light of shared experience." Before I share what happened at last night's support group meeting, tell me, what secrets have you kept out of shame that might help others if shared? The ripples keep spreading. Last month, we launched a secure website where families can check the patterns and warning signs. Marcus calls it Rose's Radar, a digital garden where red flags bloom before disasters can take root. This morning, I received an email from a prison counselor in another state. One of Destiny's former associates, serving time for similar crimes, wants to hunt. She's offering information, names, methods, not for a reduced sentence, but because she watched our videos and, in her words, couldn't carry the weight anymore. Sometimes justice isn't just about punishment. Sometimes it's about transformation, about turning poison into medicine. If this information has helped you or someone you love, please subscribe and share. Every share could be someone's warning sign, someone's wake-up call, someone's salvation. Because in the end, that's what my garden taught me. Even the thorniest roses can help others grow. And sometimes the deepest wounds become the clearest warnings. The story that began with a slap in my garden has bloomed into something bigger than any of us imagined. And we're just getting started. Today, I'm sitting in my study surrounded by hundreds of letters that have poured in since our story went public. Each envelope holds a different version of the same pain, the same hope, the same quest for answers. But one letter in particular changed everything we thought we knew about Destiny's network. If you're new to our journey, subscribe now. What I'm about to share could protect someone you love. The letter came from a prison chaplain in Nevada. "Miss Thompson," it began, "one of our inmates recognized Destiny from your videos. She says she trained her." My hands shook as I read further. The inmate, a woman named Victoria Gates, claimed to be part of what she called the Academy, an underground network that taught women how to identify, manipulate, and exploit vulnerable targets, particularly those with substantial assets or inheritance potential. Drop it in the comments if you've ever encountered someone who seemed too perfectly trained in manipulation. I immediately contacted Detective Williams, who'd handled our case. Within days, he and Marcus were flying to Nevada to interview Victoria. What she revealed stunned us all. "The Academy isn't just about theft," Marcus told me over the phone that night. "It's a systematic operation. They have psychologists who help profile targets, pharmacists who provide the drugs, lawyers who create ironclad paperwork. Mom, Destiny was just a foot soldier." The scope of it made my blood run cold. How many other families had been destroyed by this invisible network? How many more Marcuses were out there, slowly being poisoned physically and emotionally? But Victoria offered something else: hope. She had names, dates, account number. Most importantly, she had the location of what she called the archive, a storage facility in Arizona, containing detailed records of every operation they'd run over the past decade. Sometimes the biggest evils hide in plain sight, like this video. If you believe in exposing darkness to light. What happened next moved like a carefully choreographed dance. FBI agents raided the storage facility while simultaneously executing warrants in 3 states. The evidence they found was staggering. Thousands of files, each containing step-by-step playbooks for destroying lives. Rose, Detective Williams called me late one night. "We found your family's file. The surveillance on your house started 6 months before Destiny even met Marcus. You weren't random targets. You were chosen." The file contained everything. Photos of my late husband's funeral, copies of property records, even notes about which roses I tended most carefully in my garden. They'd studied us like scientists study specimens, looking for every possible pressure point. For anyone watching who feels like they're being watched, trust that instinct. Share your concerns in the comments below. But among the evidence, we found something that broke my heart all over again. Marcus discovered a series of letters he'd written during his drugged state, letters Destiny had intercepted and kept as trophy pieces. Reading them now, with clear eyes, my son finally understood the full extent of his struggle. "Dear Mom," one letter read, "something's wrong, but I can't explain what. When I try to think about it, my thoughts slip away like water. Destiny says I'm sick, that she's helping me. But Mom, I'm scared. If you're reading this, please don't give up on me." Marcus sat beside me as we read them together, his hand gripping mine. "I remember writing these," he said softly. "It was like being trapped behind glass, watching myself disappear. Have you ever found evidence of yourself fighting against something you couldn't name? Tell us your story of awakening." The investigation expanded rapidly. Victoria's testimony led to the identification of 47 active operators across the country. Each one had been trained by the Academy, each one targeting families with the same methodical precision that Destiny had used on us. But perhaps the most shocking discovery came from an unexpected source. Among the Academy's records was a familiar name, Destiny's mother. She had been one of the organization's founding members, grooming her own daughter to follow in her footsteps. "It's generational," Marcus observed during one of our support group meetings. "They're not just creating predators, they're breeding them." This revelation led us to shift our focus. It wasn't enough to just catch the current operators. We needed to understand how they were made, how to identify them early, how to break the cycle. Before I share what we're doing to dismantle this network, remember, evil thrives in silence. Subscribe and share to help break that silence. We've now established a national database, working with law enforcement and social services to track patterns and protect potential victims. Every week, more survivors come forward, adding their pieces to the puzzle. The garden where this story began has become a meeting place for healing. Twice a month, we host outdoor sessions where survivors can share their stories under the open sky, surrounded by new roses planted to represent each family saved from the Academy's reach. Marcus leads many of these sessions, his own healing journey becoming a roadmap for others. "We're not just survivors," he tells them. "We're the resistance. Every story we share, every predator we expose, weakens their foundation." And he's right. The Academy's power relied on isolation and silence. But in my garden, surrounded by survivors sharing their truth, that power crumbles like autumn leaves. If you recognize any of these patterns in your life or someone else's, reach out. Help is available and you're not alone. Because sometimes the most important stories aren't about the battles we fight, but about the truths we uncover and the lives we save by sharing them. The letters keep coming, but now they're not just tales of pain. They're testimonies of liberation, of families rescued before the Academy could destroy them. Each one is a reminder that even the darkest secrets can't survive in the light of shared truth. 2 years after that slap in my garden, I found myself standing before a Senate committee. The room was packed with survivors, law enforcement officers, and families still bearing the scars of the Academy's work. Marcus sat in the front row, his presence giving me strength. If you followed our journey from the beginning, you know this moment was years in the making. New viewers, subscribe to understand how we got here. Distinguished members of the committee, I began, my principal's voice steady despite my racing heart. What happened to my family wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a calculated system designed to destroy lives and steal legacies. The evidence we presented that day was overwhelming. Through our network of survivors and law enforcement partners, we documented over 300 cases spanning 2 decades. The Academy's reach extended into every state, with tentacles in real estate, banking, and even health. For those who've experienced institutional gaslighting, drop on us in the comments. Your story matters, but it was the testimony that followed mine that truly shook the room. A former academy trainer granted immunity for her cooperation, detailed their selection and grooming process, how they targeted women who showed particular talents for manipulation, how they taught them to weaponize charm and vulnerability. We called it harvesting hearts, she explained, her voice hollow. Find the loneliest, wealthiest targets, learn their patterns, become what they're missing, then strip them of everything: dignity, family, assets. The drugs were just insurance. Marcus gripped my hand as we listened. In the gallery, I could see other survivors doing the same, holding on to each other, anchoring themselves against the flood of painful recognition. Sometimes the hardest truth to hear is the one that explains everything. Share this video if you believe in the power of understanding our enemies. The committee's questions were pointed, especially about the medical aspect. How had these women obtained prescription drugs so easily? The answer revealed another layer of the Academy's corruption. A network of compromised healthcare providers who wrote prescriptions in exchange for a percentage of the stolen assets. Mrs. Thompson, one senator asked, "What do you believe is the most crucial step in preventing these crimes?" I thought about my years as a principal, how often I'd seen troubled students transform when someone simply paid attention. Awareness and connection, I answered. These predators target isolation. They count on shame keeping their victims silent. But in our support groups, we've seen that shared knowledge becomes shared power. Before I tell you about the legislation we're proposing, let me ask, what warning signs do you wish someone had told you about? Share your wisdom in the comments. The hearing led to immediate action. The Justice Department created a special task force dedicated to dismantling exploitation networks like the Academy. But more importantly, it opened doors for survivors to reclaim what was stolen from them. Marcus, now fully recovered and working as an advocate, helped draft what we call the Rose Garden Act, comprehensive legislation addressing financial exploitation and coercive control. The act includes provisions for asset recovery, mandatory testing when exploitation is suspected, and enhanced penalties for organized predatory networks. "Mom," Marcus said after the hearing, "remember when you used to say every student had a story worth hearing?" I nodded, remembering countless hours in my office, listening to troubled teens. That's what we're doing now, isn't it? We're making sure every survivor's story gets heard. If you're working in advocacy or support services, this next part is crucial. Like and share to help spread these protection strategies. But perhaps the most powerful outcome wasn't legislative at all. As our story spread, more Academy members began coming forward, choosing redemption over conspiracy. Each one brought new information, new names, new chances to prevent future victims. Last week, I received a letter from a young woman who'd been recruited by the Academy but escaped during training. She wrote, "Your videos saved me from becoming someone I would have hated. Now I work with domestic violence survivors, using what I learned about manipulation to help others spot it." The garden where this story began has grown into something I never imagined. We've established the Rose Thompson Foundation, providing resources and support for families recovering from exploitation. Marcus runs our youth education program, teaching high school students about healthy relationships and financial independence. For those working with young people, remember, prevention starts with education. Share your teaching moments in the comments, but the most remarkable transformation has been in our Survivors Network. What started as a small support group in my living room has become a national movement. We call ourselves the Resistance, not just surviving, but actively fighting back against organized exploitation. Recently, during one of our garden sessions, a new member asked me if I ever regretted going public with our story. I looked around at the faces of survivors and advocates, at Marcus leading a group discussion under the Rose Arbor, at Detective Williams sharing updates on recent rescues. "The only thing I regret," I told her, "is that it took a slap in my garden to wake me up, but sometimes the hardest wake-up calls lead to the most important work." Before I share our plans for international expansion, tell me, how has your painful experience become your purpose? Because that's what this journey has taught us. Every story of survival becomes a light for someone else's darkness. Every truth we uncover weakens the foundation of those who profit from deception. Every garden we plant becomes a sanctuary for healing and hope. The Academy thought they could silence us with shame and drugs. Instead, they created an army of survivors determined to expose their methods and protect others from their reach. This isn't just my story anymore. It's our story, and we're still writing new chapters every day.